Today I want to talk about first inversion, part of my series of Harmony Unleashed. For most of us, we learn four-part harmony through many learning systems, whether that's through ABRSM or Trinity or the AMEB. Learning four-part harmony obviously needs to be introduced in stages, and so you need to be taught processes, but in the realm of that, you may not actually get the full story of why. Where does it come from? Why do we do certain things? And to try to answer some of those questions is a much deeper story. So today I want to take just the use of first inversion, and maybe we can have a little explanation as to where it comes from, what's its real purpose. And to do that, I thought we might have a quick look at some examples, including a chorale by J.S. Bach, who of course is a master of four-part harmony. His Bach chorales are basically the standard of four-part harmony, the sort of culmination of 18th century harmony. So we will definitely see some examples and some uses. So, all right, let's see if we can understand. Why would we use first inversion? So that's when we, rather than having a root position chord, place the third of the root position triad into the bass voice. So that, in a sense, destabilizes the triad by placing the third of the chord into the bass voice rather than the stable root position. But by using the first inversion, we get a much more interesting and emotional and vulnerable harmony, because if you look at it as a close position triad, a first inversion chord outlines a sixth, because it means that the root note of the triad is in an upper voice, because we have the third of the chord into the bass voice. Now, why would we do that, and what does it offer us? Well, you need to understand that the first inversion is a legacy of Renaissance counterpoint. It's a legacy of the polyphonic harmony throughout the Renaissance, going right back to the beginning of polyphony. Polyphony just means multiple melodies. So as a little benchmark, historically speaking, pre-1600, this is a very rough explanation, but pre-1600 music, Western educated music, was basically polyphonic. So every voice was melodic. And of course, imitative, so all the voices would share the themes. And so it was very important that the voices could be scalic, because every voice, including the bass, is trying to sing a melody. So let's have a look at the Bach chorale here and see what we do with first inversion. And then we might have a look back at an example of some Renaissance counterpoint a little bit later on. So firstly, what first inversion does is it offers scale motion in the bass voice. So let's just examine the Bach chorale here. Now, please overlook the fact that this starts in D minor, and before you know it, we've just gone straight to F major. I won't get into that. Let's just look at the chords. We'll talk about that another day. But anyway, here we have the chord of F major. We've got an F major key signature anyway, so relative major to D minor. But here we are with F major, but we have the third of the root position chord into the bass voice. Okay, and so that means that we see Bach moving by step to the next chord. So here we have, in fact, this is chord 2 in first inversion. We just have this suspended F here that continues. So here we have another first inversion chord. So we've gone from one first inversion to another first inversion. And then here we have this step up. So the use of a first inversion chord is effective because it allows us then to move by step to a root position chord. So here we have chord 2 going to chord 5, chord 2 in first inversion, going to chord 5 by step. Let's look at another example. So where are we here? We have chord 1, first inversion. And again, he uses the same idea, going to another first inversion chord, and then by step to the root position chord. So you can see Bach is out to use as many as he can. And what is the result of these first inversion chords? Stepping. So they step to the next chord. Look at the scale motion in his bass line. So once you can achieve that scale motion in the bass, then that offers the potential for thematic counterpoint. So that, while, for example, right here in front of us, this bass is moving by step upwards, we have the soprano moving down by step. So beautifully configured. Here we have this contrary motion of scale motion, masterfully treated. How does Bach achieve this contrary motion? By the use of first inversion. So this is just a lovely example of how the first inversion chord offers us that scale motion in the bass. When you have scale motion in the bass, then the direction of the music is strong because the ear picks up that it's stepping, right? So you can see that stepping up. And by stepping up, it's going somewhere, right? So the music is driving itself to a point, and it's beautiful to follow. That's why it's so lovely to listen to, because the music is driving itself to a point because of that stepwise motion. But in addition to that, the first inversion is emotional because it's just it's like a soft version of the root position chord. If all you did was root position chords, the music would be quite stale, harsh, and stiff. So this just adds so much emotion and depth of harmony to the progression. This is why once you get to know Bach's music, you start to understand the emotional content of what composers are able to achieve. Okay, so you can see from the example. Now let's move up. I mentioned Renaissance harmony. Why don't we have a little look at it? Because here we can see, now that we understand a little bit of what it is we want to achieve, let's have a look at it historically. So here's, look, a little portion that I've chosen from the composer William Byrd. So William Byrd was one of the great Renaissance masters of counterpoint. So when we say counterpoint, we mean lines moving together, lines of melodic voices moving distinctly. So counterpoint is the art of being able to put multiple melodies together where the movement of each voice is independent of another voice. They're not just tied to each other with the same motion. That doesn't mean we don't have similar motion. Of course, what counterpoint teaches when you study it is that you have a healthy dose of similar motion, contrary motion, and of course oblique motion, which is where one voice stays the same while another moves either up or down in an angular fashion. So, have a look here. We have here a first inversion just in this second bar of this example. We've got chord 5, first inversion. By the way, it's G major at this point. I didn't bother putting in a key signature. That's me being lazy. Okay, so here we have chord 5, first inversion, and going to chord 1. Why? Because it steps up. So we get this scale motion in the bass, and here we have the third of chord 5. So what would normally be D, F sharp, A, well, the F sharp we have in the bass voice. And so as a slightly destabilized version of the root position triad, we've got the third in the bass. We then resolve to a root position chord, and it's very satisfying. So we've got that scale motion in the bass. But what's really going on here? Well, this F sharp to G is part of a theme, right? So every voice here is playing this theme. So that's why I said before that in Renaissance counterpoint, it's thematic counterpoint. So every voice is thematic, and so every voice is playing the melody, right? So, we have here dum da dum 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 bum ba dum, right? So soprano. Sorry, I didn't sing that very well then, but I'm not going to claim to be a singer, right? So the soprano is also singing this melody, but then here the tenor comes in and plays an inversion of this theme. So the bass came in with G, down to the F sharp, up to the G, and down to the E. The tenor comes in with the D, steps up, and then steps down, an inversion. So where it stepped up and then a leap down, we have a step up, a step up and a leap down. Sorry, it's imitating. Yeah. All right, so you can see that each voice is playing that theme. Here's the inversion I was looking for. So here we have the third down and the step up. Okay, so we've got some thematic material happening here, but this is where the use of this first inversion has come from. So as Renaissance composers worked their counterpoint, of course, they would work with these triads because they didn't even think of triads. They were just working consonant intervals, working their counterpoint. So for them, chords were just a series of intervals above a low note. Okay, so even their concept of what chords was not the same as our concept. So the development of the triad historically was something that came later. It's not until the 1700s when we really start to get a concept of just the triad as a single vertical unit of sound. So that's the history of it. Okay, so now I've got some examples here. The scale can teach you some simple uses of first inversion in stepwise motion. So what I've done here, I've harmonized the ascending scale. All right, so this is a little formula that you can use to keep an eye out of how to use first inversion. And from this scale motion, we see here chord 1 first inversion going to chord 4, and then we see chord 5 going to chord 1, chord 5 first inversion stepping up to chord 1. We can see here that we can use 2 first inversion chords in a row as part of that step up, like we saw in the Bach. So here we have chord 4, first inversion, going to chord 5, first inversion, and then resolving to chord 1. And that is one of the most powerful uses of first inversion. It's not the only use of first inversion, but it is certainly a very powerful one. And then, of course, finally, this works forwards as well as backwards. So here I've done a little example where I've harmonized. I've made this up myself. So here is a melody ascending by scale, mostly scale steps. But then 2, we have the bass line, and look at the way it's moving in contrary motion. So the bass line is in scale steps. So here we have this second chord is chord 5. So we're in C major here now. So here we have chord 5, G, B, D, but we've got B in the bass, stepping down to chord 6. So that's what I call the step down. So chord 5, chord of G in first inversion with B in the bass stepping down to a root position chord. Here we have chord 3 in first inversion, stepping down to the root position chord 4. And then here I've done the chord 4 first inversion, going to chord 5 first inversion, stepping up to the root position of chord 1. Okay, so I hope that gives some explanation, just what's behind the purpose of these processes. There's a historical background to why we do things the way we do things. And I am always saying it's really good to understand your musical history, because that's where you learn. So studying the Bach chorales is difficult, but I can highly recommend it. Okay, so I hope that helps give you some explanation of the real story behind first inversion.